Welcome back to episode number 15 of the One More K podcast. Number 15, amazing. I'm here with Ned and with Jeri. Good morning, the two of you in Singapore.
Markus, how are you, man? Good to see you. Jeri, we need to be honest here. We welcome you back for the second time. We had such a lovely conversation, but unfortunately my computer refused to allow it to be publicized. So we're doing this again. So thank you, Jeri, for your second but first time on our little show.
No worries. Nice to see you both. I'm no stranger to technical difficulties.
That's true. Well, let's quickly introduce you, Jeri, to our dear audience out there. So Jeri Chua is the owner of the Red Dot Running Company in Singapore, the place to be for anything trail running in Singapore. That's where many of the stories begin for trail running in Singapore. My own personal story of Lekka started in that shop, so I was inspired by the prices and the great products and to see what I can do there. And also Jeri, of course, has a long career in running. You were the first Singaporean woman to qualify for the World Championships of Ironman in Kona, Hawaii. That was a bit of time ago. And since then you've had many, you're not that old, so I didn't want to say that. Anyone watching right now on YouTube, you can see how great Jeri looks, by the way. So sorry for that little side note. But in any case, you have done since then many other great races, from the Tour de Géant, of course, you've done UTMB, you've done the Gobi race in the desert. And many other races you have done, as well as you just got back from New Zealand. You've been at the Fault Line event, which is coincidence because last week's guest, Sam Harvey, was on the show, and he also went to Fault Line. So we have a bit of a New Zealand connection going on. How did it go, Jeri? How was the Fault Line event?
Oh, it was lovely. My first race in many, many years now, probably about 4 years. And I only did a little 24K. My legs remembered what to do, but they're really aching now. And it's urban trails, a little bit like Hong Kong. You can get really into some very nice trails, but you're very close to the city center. So I would recommend this race. It was the first year they were running it this year, and I think worth doing.
Jeri, just to say, so cool to see you racing again.
I would use that word racing with a pinch of salt, for sure.
How did it, look, you, as Markus said, you've done so many amazing races, right? But you haven't raced for a while. Were you nervous? Did it feel weird? How did you feel? Putting the shoes on, getting the number on?
I think it was actually really nice because it was a shorter race. You don't really have to worry about too much gear. The two mandatory items were hydration flask and a merino top, a thermal top. And so I wore the thermal top because it was freezing. And then I carried the hydration flask. And so, I didn't need really anything else. And it was such a great atmosphere. It's kind of a small city race, not a huge number of participants to start. And so it was just very easy getting into it and just kind of poodling along at my own pace.
Does it mean you're getting ready for a race season, or is this like a warm-up run for something else to come?
No, not yet. I think this year is going to be very, very busy for me work-wise. And so I took this as an opportunity to just see how my legs are. In all honesty, I signed up several months ago thinking I've got plenty of time to train up for this. I rock up at the start line and I haven't managed to run at all this year. That was the furthest I run all year.
Not even like a Bukitima little climb in beforehand or anything like Richie?
Actually, I did 3 days hiking on the Hump Ridge track just before that. So that was 62 Ks on the trails, which was a lot of fun, but maybe not the best preparation perhaps, but it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Great. Talking about racing, coming to our quick news section of the week. We had some exciting events happening actually over the last 7 days. First and foremost, of course, there was the famous London Marathon happening. Did any of you follow the London Marathon?
I did, because I don't know, may or may not have a VPN. We can debate that later, but I'm able to watch BBC TV. And it was pretty cool. And, because I'm old, I am old, Jeri is young, I am old at 56. Kenenisa Bekele at 42 was leading in the group. And I'm like, because it's the only race he hasn't won. He has 10 world championships. He's got 10 Olympics. I mean, he is the great. Eliud and Kenenisa Bekele, Haile Gebrselassie. And the group of 6 leading guys, 5 leading guys, 4 leading guys. Then it was just Kenenisa and Munyao. And honestly, you could see Kenenisa was like, what? I ditched the young guys? And he kept looking back as if he couldn't believe it at 42. And I was willing him on, being an old dude. I mean, this guy being a legend. But Munyao had him. And you see this British guy in third? He just thought he'd be lucky to get top 10. All the African dudes went backwards. He crossed the line. He didn't know he was third. And then the organizers said, hey, can you stand here for the podium top 3? And he was like, what? What, like me? It was so cool.
I mean, I think it's interesting, right? There's 6 out of 10 are non-African runners. So British, French, German, American. So
the lead African Kenyan Ethiopian pack. Basically, it's for the last 20 years, only 2 nationalities have won the London Marathon: Kenyan or Ethiopian. That's it. And they all went out and they just smashed each other to pieces. And the British guy ran through the guys that fell off.
Women, a bit different. There's no European in the top 10. And I think mostly importantly, it's Paris who did an amazing job in getting the women's only world record in 2 hours and 16 minutes and 16 seconds. That is pretty impressive. Women's only world record means she didn't have any male pacers, if I understand this correctly.
Yeah. She did. So Jeri, I see you have some bikes in the background. You've done Ironman, so you know about cycling. We talk about running. You know the power of drafting. In running, it's slightly less. The winner, she never took one turn in the wind. She made all these 3 ladies ran 42.0K in the last 200 meters. She just torched them. It was hilarious.
Running
Pretty
smart.
impressive.
She ran super smart.
Moving on to a desert race, which I think I actually don't know right now. Had any of you done Marathon des Sables?
No, I haven't.
Not me either.
But both of you have done the Gobi Desert Race, right?
Only Jeri, I think.
The Gobi race, slightly different. There is a desert Racing the Planet Gobi race. That's a stage race.
I see. Well, exciting enough. We had the Marathon des Sables Legendary, that's how it's called now. And we had 2 Moroccans win, Rachid El Morabiti and Aziza El Amrani. Going for the win. I checked out the race again. This time it seemed like the stage 6 was not anymore just a charity run. It was also a race. Usually stage 6 is just for charity, but they included that one as well. And anyone watching can see on YouTube, but stage 1 was pretty straightforward, apparently. But up to stage 3 and 4 went 85 kilometers per stage and then 43 in stage 4. But the sandstorms must have been pretty intense. But yeah, it was a tough race this year.
The dude that won, him and his brother have won the last 20. El Morabati have won them all. Jeri, just a question. What do you think about stage racing? You've done so many. You've done Tour de Géants, which could be a stage race, but it's straight through. What's your feeling on stage or straight through?
Personally, I prefer straight through because you get to manage your own time, and I like being able to keep moving because I never really slept very much. It didn't bother me sleeping. But I also see the appeal of stage races. I know a lot of people who do stage races and do really well by it. And, you really have to be able to manage your recovery, get up the next day and be able to hammer at it, at 100% again, every day, day after day, depending on how long the stage race is. Yeah. So kudos to those people for sure.
I think if it's, look, you have enough experience, you can go 250, 300K in one big push. But it's unrealistic to think somebody who's relatively has only got a few years in their legs is going to do that. And I think stage is the right step forward. I don't know if you saw, but on just in slight news on racing, you obviously know who Candice Burt is, the legendary organ. She sold out her 300-mile race in a day, straight through, 300 miles. And do you know how much she's charging for it, Jeri?
No, I didn't have a look actually, but I imagine it's quite a lot.
$2,325. And she
Wow.
sold 300 in a day. My little bit of mathematics says that's 700,000 US. Can you imagine a race director 10 years ago when we were thinking about racing, selling out 700,000 US of race directing fees in a day?
No, I mean, but who would have thought that you're going to pay 2.5 grand for a race?
Crazy, right?
But
What are we doing
yeah.
here? Maybe we should change our jobs and go into race directors.
But I'll tell you though, there's not any money in it. The hours you put in, the volunteers that you've got to have, the teams that you've got to rely on, it is crazy. Yeah, uh, it's thankless.
Great segue to the next quick topic, which is the 100 group. That was some news already, I think, from a few weeks ago, but it got picked up recently on more social media channels. So I think anyone is familiar with Dragon's Den. It's a show format from the UK where entrepreneurs pitch ideas to dragons, so-called dragons or investors, essentially asking for money, and investors can invest or not invest. And there was a couple of guys coming, to Italians, I believe, to the show pitching
One
an idea.
Portuguese, one Italian.
Thank you. One Portuguese, one Italian. I picked up 2 Southern European accents there, but okay. They pitched 100, and I'm going to play the clip very quickly, not the full clip on YouTube, but just a few seconds, because I think it gives a better idea of what we're talking about. So please bear with me.
Decided to complete that race.
Why?
And I came across the fastest growing sport in the world, trail running. And so when I left my previous company in 2019, I decided to start 100.
We want to develop a trail running world championship. And we now have this year a race in Brazil, then Portugal, and we have the final stage in Italy. In the next 3 years, we want to explode the competition in 9 stages in other countries, in all the 5 continents.
Great. That's maybe a good start. They were asking for $100,000 of investment for 2% of the company. The deal then ended up being $50,000 for 5% and some percentage of the royalty. And guess who took the investment? It was Steve Bartlett, the famous podcast CEO, Diary of a CEO, who took the investment. So we just talked about the racing industry. What are your thoughts on this pitch? Would you invest? What would you do with this? What do you think? Jeri, why don't you start?
You start, because I have some strong thoughts and I don't want you to be polluted by my strong thoughts.
Well, you know, it's really hard to start a trail race series without some or any sort of race series without some serious money behind you, right? But look at the current series. So the World Trail Majors is a new series that started this year, and they've got a good number of races under their belt there. So I'd be really interested to see if these guys are pairing with established races already, or if they are creating their own races within the industry, and whether they know what they're up against, because there's the big 4-letter word monster, who shall not be named currently. And there's a lot of other factors in play. It's not you. I don't think you can necessarily see it as a business venture in that sense, because there's so much with regards to community that's involved in it. And if you're not really passionate about it and you're doing it for the money, that's it. I don't think it's gonna fly.
Thank you for perspective. Just to let everyone know, I reached out to those guys as well, and trying to get them onto the podcast. I'm curious to hear their thoughts. Again, it's hard to, of course, understand everything from a few minutes clip, but just, again, benefit of the doubt from my side. I'm curious to learn more. But yeah, I can see Ned on coals. The volcano is ready to erupt. Ned, go.
I'm going to be nice, calm, because Markus, who is the calming element in our relationship, he keeps me thoughtful. There's always two sides to a story. Hey, look, I adore the fact that ultra running was on drag. I love Dragon's Den. You know, we're business guys. I'm a runner. I was like, what? And oddly enough, I knew he was going to get money because he was if you've watched Dragon's Den, he was the last one on and no one else had got money. And in the show, someone always gets money, right? So I'm like, oh, this dude's getting money. He's a good presenter. But Jeri, it's amazing. Like, you obviously know this industry so deeply. You nailed what I'm about to go about. And look, we'd love to have the gentleman on the show. When Stephen Bartlett asked him, so are you the pioneers in 100-mile racing? He said yes. My wife had to hold me back as I launched at the TV. I was like, what the heck? And he said, and we've created this World Championships. And I'm like, and by the way, we can say UTMB, just to let you know, Jeri, we had the CEO of UTMB International on our show, Florian. He was a dude. He acknowledged that they've got some challenges, but no one can debate. Who is the gorilla in the room? Was UTMB. That's not for debate. Whether we love them or don't love them, there isn't a debate that they're the monster in the room. Could be a good monster, bad monster, whatever. And then, he's a good negotiator. So I went to the 100. You get a chance, Jeri, after the show. He's got a World Championships. And with no disrespect to the runners in that championship, because they would wipe the floor with me, obviously. But they're not getting top 50 at UTMB. And it's just like you said, Jeri. The World Trail Major brought together some great races. UTMB was a great race. They all had 20-year history. Man, I think it's going to be fascinating to see, because I think he's up against it.
I'm going to get a bag of popcorn and pay attention.
Do it. Look, the one thing that Markus said correctly is Stephen Bartlett is the magic social media man. And he has money. Could he force this through? And maybe, if he gets a few bits and UTM buys him out, maybe there is a play here. But it was fascinating to see.
Yeah, I'm just still very, very interested to see how they would follow this through if there isn't that real passion for the sport itself. Because you really can't just run it as a business, I don't think. You really have to, and I obviously need to watch a little more and find out where this guy's coming from. But to say that if he really said that he's created 100-mile trail racing, then
yeah. Look, I
have no words right now.
he has done Badwater, so fair play. He's done Badwater, but then again, you've run you are a legendary, but there's plenty of people who've done Badwater, and that doesn't mean they're ultra running, Anyway, so look, let's give the benefit. Do have a watch. We're going to try and get him on the show. And look, the more ultra running grows, the better for Red Dot, the better for Lecker, the better for the industry, better for everybody. So we should cheer on. It was just that little comment of, yeah, we're the pioneers of 100-mile racing. I'm like,
I have nothing against them. No, I'm just very, very interested to see how this plays out.
For sure, that's a fact. The friend who sent it to me on Facebook, he was saying, oh, that's cool. It's happening on BBC, trail running. I know now why you're doing Lecker, because it seems like the world is growing in your... It's like, exactly. I think so. It gets more attention. And it was like, yep, it helps people like me to justify to our families why I'm doing all this. If the BBC is covering it, it's great. But I think maybe kind of slightly using that as a segue to the Singapore angle, because Jeri, you are an athlete, you are a business owner, and you're a race organizer. I think you had a good point about community versus business with community. What is happening right now in the sport about community with and with not business, like UTMB and others coming in? What does it mean right now for the sport? Where are we with this?
I think the sport's come a long way for sure. And within Singapore and within the region itself, it's still some ways back from, how it's developed in the US and in Europe, obviously. We're still catching up. Our community is growing, by leaps and bounds. Within Singapore itself, our hands are tied a little bit with regard to events, just because we don't really have the natural resources, the trails to actually have events. But on the business side, from my perspective, obviously, we do well because we've got a good community foundation. We really try and be as authentic and relevant to the community as possible. And they can see our passion or my passion. For me, that makes a real difference. I can't be the kind of store that just sells stuff, because there's got to be a reason behind it. I won't, hop on a fad just because, everyone that's what's selling. I will make sure that the product is functional and useful and does what it says on the tin. And that ties in with our community, because the idea that there are so many new people coming into the sport, um, there's so much information to be had, there's so much education to be done. If no one takes the time to help with this education and information, then the sport doesn't grow and the community doesn't grow in the way we would want it to be. It means that it won't have legs. It won't have a strong foundation to build itself on. And without that foundation, people just think, oh, well, that's the next new sport. High Rocks has come around the corner. I'll do that instead. And your community dissipates just like that. And so social media is a great way of building communities, but how strong are the foundations of your community? That's, I think, quite an important aspect to think about.
When you come into Red Dot, so for me, and you know this, Jeri, but for me, when I come into Red Dot, I'm like, I could just kind of hang out there. That's the interesting thing. And is that what you wanted to create? Look, obviously you're a business person, Jeri. You're a runner, you're a business person. But I get that feeling, like we talked before, because we've done the show before, but, Feder Sports, one of the OGs, crazy shops in Singapore. For any of you in Singapore, of course, go to Red Dot. But for an experience, go to Feder. It's like this tiny shop with literally a million shoes in the roof, on the ink, but you can't hang out in there. Right? You just can't, right? The guy knows his stuff. How much, look, you have to make a living, Jeri. How much was it when you started Red Dot, you just wanted to do it as a passion play, like a lot of people in Ultra, and how much, you know what I'm asking, how did it feel?
I never thought that I would build a business of this size when I first started Red Dot. It was literally just, I needed some gear. I couldn't find the gear that I needed. And then I thought, okay, I'll order some in. And then hang on a minute, some other people are asking me to help out with this as well. And so it became a thing. It started out of my spare room, and people were coming to my house to try on hydration packs. And it was all very cottage industry, small scale. But the whole point of making this a business for me was to help grow that community, because if I couldn't find the information, not just gear, right? The information that I needed to figure out how am I going to last, 6 days in a 200-mile race, for example, or what do I do when I get major blisters? A lot of these things are, you learn by trial and fire, right? Literally, you drop yourself in it and you're like, okay, I'm going to have to cut the inner lining out of my shorts because I'm chafed to bits and there's nothing else I can do because I still got 60 miles to go. People were also coming to me to ask for advice, to ask about my experience in races. And this was a great avenue, or a great way for me to channel the information that I had to people who were interested in either becoming part of the community or already were part of the community but wanted to find out more about some of the things that I did. And I love that we were able to share that information. And so with Red Dot, the key really is community for me from the beginning, and still is. Aim is to create a space that becomes like an Aladdin's cave of stuff. You walk in and you get excited about things that you see around you. And also with, my staff, making sure that they are well informed and well educated so they can share that and with their experiences as well. I think that's just really important and will always be important for Red Dot Running Company.
And through Red Dot, I assume you have kind of a thing on the pulse of Singapore's trail running, ultra community. What are like the new things you see happening in terms of demographics, in terms of needs and problems? Like what's going on? Where are the trends, if you want to put this simple question? Yeah.
How much time have you got?
We got all day.
Well,
let's go.
I mean, that's a question that has a lot of facets, that can be answered. In a nutshell, a few of the things that I'm excited about at the moment is, first of all, we finally got a Singapore Ultra Running Association. Uh, this is started by some of the local runners. It's been in the works for years now. Now we finally got one. It's a central point for some of the ultra runners in particular. So there is also a distinction between trail running and ultra running, right? And we often sort of just use them interchangeably. One's to do with terrain, one's to do with distance or time. So this one is ultra running. I don't know if we could possibly have a trail running association.
That would be funny, Jerry.
I think it's a great start because it means that people feel like they're going to be represented. We're at a point where we've got enough ultra runners here and trail runners where they're really stepping up. They want to represent Singapore. They have the ability to represent the country in um, Asian Masters, for example, the Asia Trail Masters, some of the other events, not even trail. You think about 24-hour races or backyards or anything like that. At least there is an association that allows, or has some information or the ability to provide some education and some support for these runners, which I really do like to see.
Just to follow up on this, because what I see happening from the Lecker perspective is a growing amount of people who are coming from road running or even yoga and Pilates, going out, putting on some shoes, going running, and even going to trail running and ultra running. So there seems to be a new trend. Maybe I'm biased because I like to sell to them, but I also think, yeah, I'm in America right now, California, same trend as in Germany, as in Vietnam and Singapore. So do these new runners come from? What do they have? What have they done before? What will they do now?
I think, running will always be something that everyone is able to pick up, right? It's one of the simplest forms of exercise. What's happening now, and coming back to the aspect of social media making things, building a community. You see a lot of these brands like Satisfy, like Bandit, like Norda, for example. They are building communities through social media. And these communities are where people who are not entrenched in the ultra trail or road running communities, even, they're on the periphery. Like you're talking about your yoga, Pilates, studio, studio goers, and these people it's coming up on their feeds, and they're looking at this, going, "Hey, that looks like a really cool thing to do. That looks like a really interesting way of getting into a sport that maybe I didn't really think that was that interesting until now." The aesthetics of things really changes people's minds. I can see Ned's really got something to say now.
But Jerry, and we want to kind of bring it back to you because we want to hear more about your history. But your point, when you started 11, 12, 15 years ago running, whatever, community was a few of us just doing it, right? People doing crazy stuff, all good. But today you summarized it beautifully because social media, if you look today, these things like the Speed Project, I'm sure you've seen the Speed Project, which no rules. And, the presenter, it is like, I don't even know what the right word is the kids use today. It's cool, it's sick, it's whatever. It is so crazy. And then if you know William Googe, the guy who ran across America, who's also a model, and he put an advert out and he said, I need a camera person to follow me. I'm an ultra runner, fashion model, partier. This lifestyle is cool. Their community, exactly, Jerry. I'm interested in your thoughts on that. Like, we seem to be getting to almost bubble levels of community, if that makes sense. Do you feel it's getting a little crazy?
Yeah, I do think that, or rather, what I wonder is, where is the tipping point? How many brands can build a sustainable business off building these niche aspirational communities that they're creating online. And how sustainable is it? Because after a while you buy into a brand and you know keep buying their stuff, but how much of it is hype and how much of it is real passion as well is something that needs to be thought about. However, I on the other hand, I am absolutely delighted that it is bringing new people, new blood into the sport. It is introducing, people to getting out there, getting fit, and I think it's doing more good than bad. I'm concerned about the business aspect and how sustainable that is, perhaps, but that's something that I suppose remains to be seen.
I was saying you come also from industry that can be considered hype and very community driven, which is fashion. And what was your journey from fashion to running? And maybe another question within that is, are there any similarities? What have you learned that you have taken to trail running, or is it very different? Like from fashion to trail running, what's been going on?
Oh, well, I think it's almost come full circle, actually. It's very interesting. So, yes, you're right. While I was racing triathlon and then later on ultra running and trail, I was involved in vocations that were completely different. So, fashion, I started as a fashion photographer by accident, became a fashion stylist, and then worked in the publishing industry as a fashion director for some publications. And all this time, it was almost like I was leading a double life because I was running at the same time, I was racing hard, and I was partying. You go out for press events, etc. You party till 2 a.m. and then I get out at 4 or 5 a.m. to start running. And people, in the fashion industry, then they're like, "You exercise?" And just the thought of running more than a 10K to them, a 5K is a marathon. A 10K is a marathon. That this is a very big generalization, and I don't mean to offend anyone. But in those days, exercising was just like, oh my God, you're getting sweaty. That's unheard of. And so I just kept those two lives very separate at the time. Um, Now with Red Dot Running Company, we've been around for this is our seventh year now. And I'd always thought that the product that we had was very, very technical and very functional. And we've started bringing in more lifestyle and more popular brands, so to speak. But I always thought that we'd eventually have to open something more along a lifestyle arm because that's how I felt that, you know, we would be able to reach out to the general demographic as opposed to the more technical runners or the ones who are more into a particular sport like ultra running or triathlon, for example. And so this year, we're actually opening a multi brand run concept store that bridges the gap between lifestyle, fashion, and sport. So that's very, very exciting. That's going to happen in Q3, and it's going to be called The Pace.
Let's go. So that's exciting. Now, one of the great. It was sad that we lost our last conversation, but it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And you're like, I can't really tell you what it is. I'm doing a new store. I'm not really sure. Now we're 3 or 4 weeks later. Why don't look? I'm sure there's only so much you can share. It's coming, but the pace and that balance between running and fashion, is that a fair summary?
Yes, essentially, you know, there's you this is almost too trendy and it makes me cringe a little bit, but there's there's a very big movement of people wearing outdoor gear, more technical stuff for everyday purposes, right? And some of this stuff yeah, that's dual purpose. We love those rabbit low tide shirts, but these people are actually wearing full on technical, like rain jackets that are breathable, that are super insulated to the office or into the studio. They're not wearing them for what it's meant to be. However, this is a big trend, so to speak, in the sport and fashion world. You can see all the collaborations, that Hoka have done, for example, with some of the designer brands. Solomon have done it. There's, Kemper and Killian have joined forces to create a new brand of their own. This is kind of the way everything is going. The lines are being blurred, and what I'm really most excited about is seeing the ultra runners and the trail runners wear more than just flip flops and old race t-shirts. That might that might be a great improvement.
I was just saying that we have covered Lululemon quite a bit actually in the last few episodes. Episode 5, we did an analysis, and Lululemon is doubling down tremendously on trail running with the new line, and they have done a lot of activation events. We have covered the hashtag further. So I think you're spot on with people are now very comfortable in wearing outdoor gear and in daily life. And when Lululemon as a brand goes into it, that tells you something. With that firepower behind them, they are making a clear bet on this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to look good while you're on the trail and off the trail.
It is. Look, I am out of 10 on fashion. I'm a 0, so I'm pretty clear about that. I'm not cool.
There's a 1 in front of that.
But when I started wearing these rabbit shirts, which I found in Red Dot, right, I did it because I just like being different. But what I've noticed is you get different people are like, what's that? And so I do a little bit of running videos, which I share on LinkedIn. And everyone's like, oh, the shirt. And then people start buying them. But I like this idea, Jeri, that what you're saying is, and I don't know if this is the right terminology, but signaling, but showing. But, I come from surfing and skateboarding. So when surfing started, Billabong was not cool. And then all of a sudden, everyone wore Billabong T-shirts, right? And Quicksilver. They made that crossover. Do you think it's the same thing? Because Billabong and Quicksilver was just for surfers and then for everybody. Do you think that's the journey we're on?
Yeah. Do you remember those Mambo shirts?
With all the cartoons and the colors, they were wild.
Yes. One of the aesthetics that you will notice, there's 2 really. One is things are very curated. They work with artists, collaborations, and so there's all these great graphics and beautiful patterns and prints. And then on the other hand, there's these brands who are creating very, very muted, neutral lines of everything. For example, if you guys are cyclists, Paranormal, for example. Yeah, that's rare find.
445. What?
I think I had
anyone
that
watching,
shirt.
we had just put out $445 for a Mambo shirt. I can find it on Etsy right now. So yeah, crazy.
No way, that's
Jeri,
crazy.
Jeri, get all of your Mambo shirts out of the cupboard. But sorry, you were saying, Jeri, carry on.
I'm saying, there are a lot of brands out there who have made a name for themselves. Their lines are very aesthetically pleasing, but very muted at the same time. So there's nothing that stands out in a major way, potentially. That's Paranormal, and you'll see their color palette is very, very natural, grays, browns, earthy colors.
Jeri, just that picture I didn't know about Paranormal looks a bit like Rafa.
Yes, so Paranormal is a cycling brand and very similar to Rafa, Map. What else have you got? I'm gonna say something wrong because I'm not so au fait with the cycling brands, but Rafa and Map are the 2 that come to mind. But yes, they have a different aesthetic, slightly different aesthetic, but it's along the same lines. You build that community of aspirational cyclists or runners or riders or whoever it is, and they buy into it. I mean, if you see the prices of some of these things, it's
You're we're going down this fashion route, which I didn't think we would, but it's interesting. People who wear raffia, I got this sense because it was very muted, right? It was just a little tiny piece of raffia. But someone said, if you know, you know. A little nod, you know, in that day-to-day activity, you know, that, and it was expensive. So it was this high-priced, cool club. And are you saying you think that ultra running can go down that road as well? This beautiful looking, it doesn't have to scream like race t-shirts. I did a marathon. I'm like, really, dude? Come on.
I wouldn't say ultra running specifically, because the ultra runners are not really fashion forward or concerned at any point. If you're going to spend 5-6 days out in the bush and on the mountains, fashion is really the last thing on your mind. However, it is the more recreational runners, the 10kers, even the marathon runners or the aspiring marathon runners. These are the ones, and the trail runners, the shorter distance guys, who are aspiring to maybe buy into the lifestyle and the community that these brands are touting. And I may sound like I don't necessarily approve, and that's untrue. I do approve because I feel like it's opening this up. We're all adults, right? You walk into any store with your eyes open, you decide whether you want to purchase or not. But being able to be part of that community, whether it's because you want to look good and you want to be a part of this dream that they're selling, that's something that's, it's business 101 throughout, right? With whatever product you're talking about. If it means that it's bringing more people into running, more people into sport, and building a sustainable community, then why not? No problem. I have no problem with that.
I think it does. It's cool. Hey, whether it's a guy on Dragon's Den, cool new clothes, if we go all the way back when Gordy Ainsley's horse first went lame and he decided to run the Western States, I don't think he was thinking of this.
No, for sure. He definitely wasn't dressed for it.
He was, and just one more question on this. We want to ask you about Singapore athletes as well. So we'd love to get your take on who are the Singapore. But I loved your take when you were a fashion and a runner. Clearly, you're very fashionable, Jeri, but you're right. When you're at like mile 70 of a 100-mile and things are going everywhere, did you just literally live in a little world of your own and not tell them about how unfashionable you were in your spare time?
Oh, you haven't seen my race pictures, have you? I'm pretty sure I looked decent.
You look cool. I'm not saying you don't look decent, but you might not have been runway ready.
I'll tell you, after my first 100-miler, my first 100-miler was literally my third ultra race. I think I did a 65, a 100, and a 100K and a 100-miler in that order. And I learned very fast. And so in that 100K, I realized that you really don't want things that are going to chafe you. And the stuff that I was wearing at the time, I was really experimenting with things, was primitive, so to speak. But I realized very quickly that running skirts worked incredibly well for me. They also looked good. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on the podcast, but you can pee standing up. That really helps, especially you're 90 miles into a 100-mile race, and if you bend down, you might not be able to get up again.
These are important considerations, Jeri.
Singaporeans are well known to be the most fashionable and most luxurious dressed runners in Asia. We all know this. I always see it in Vietnam. This person's from Singapore, most expensive gear. Anyway, who are the top athletes right now? Where are they going? Where are they training? What's going on?
There's so many of the I'd say the old guard that have stuck with the sport. People like Abby, like Hong Wei, for example, and we see them doing various things with the with Natalie Dow, for example. She is about to embark on her Project 1000, which is running 1,000 kilometers across Malaysia or along Malaysia. There are so many of the runners who are still doing what they're doing. They're just not making a big thing about it. You know, they don't have a lot of social media. We don't really know what's going on with them. But with the races that are coming up all around the world, you know, things have changed so much. They are taking part in 200 milers, 300 milers even, and some of us don't know anything about this. The younger runners, I think, coming up, it's very interesting to see because I feel like they're getting a lot of support from the older, more experienced runners. And I say older and not necessarily older in age, but they're just more experienced and they've done a lot. And being able to train the younger ones, being able to train, or the newer athletes being able to train with the more experienced ones, has really made a change, I think, in their ability and their staying power. Because previously, where we used to see, you know, a lot of the less experienced athletes would drop out due to, you know, some kind of malfunction, something goes wrong, they're not sure how to deal with it, nutrition isn't dialed in. Right now they're getting so much more support, guidance and information from the community that they're able to just make leaps and bounds in the sport itself without making the mistakes that we did. So I do like seeing that. But if you ask me to name people specifically from this up and coming tranche of athletes, I think you only have to look at Asia Trail Masters, for example, and you'll see not just from Singapore, but from all around the region, there are some incredible athletes, especially the women. I'm so excited to see some of the women that we have racing because it is incredible to see, you know, Vietnamese runners really representing at a very high level, Filipino runners really, again, Hong Kong, we already know that, you know, they've got great caliber there. But it's just very exciting now, and there's so many races that I don't know where to turn.
It is. It is. Look, Singapore doesn't have the natural landscape to suggest that we're going to win in the big mountains. And we also are a society that hasn't optimized for sport, right? I adore Singapore. You do too, right? But it optimizes for other things. But that is changing. And I love your point, like whether it's Abbey or some of the old guards or, you know, I'm a member of McRitchie Runners, and they've been running around McRitchie, our famous reservoir, since the 80s. And I don't know if you remember, there was a lady, an expat lady, to be fair, called Yvonne, can't remember her name. And she was like placing up in, my God, you do know. She was quality, right?
Do you know that she still holds the Singapore women's marathon record? And I believe it's a 2:49. No one has ever close.
Wow. And for people listening, while 2:49 doesn't seem fast, you come and run Singapore Heat 2:49 as a non-pro. That is no joke. Just a question before we did want to ask you some views on UTMB. What, you know, look, as you know, I adore Backyard. Jeri, you know, it's my only race of the year. I adore it. What Joshua did at Backyard at 72, I mean, I think that's fair to say that was like world class. My question is, can we be world class?
And my response is, why not? If you look at the Singaporean psyche and the way we've all been brought up, a lot of people are good at ultra running. They're maybe not world class yet, but the mentality towards ultra running or long distance events is just get your head down and do it. You know, like we talked about Ben Sui's events, this homegrown race director who's got a penchant for having people run round and round stuff for hours, or, you know, find your way around the country for hours. this is something that nobody complains about. Singaporeans are great at complaining, but nobody says, "Oh, I don't want to do that again." They're so happy to, sign me up for 16 hours running around a 4.5K loop in the hot sun. Sure, I'll do it. And I think this is the mentality that paves the way to greatness, or world class greatness at least, because we're being told, if here's the route, go do it. And instead of thinking, oh no, I can't do it because I don't have the right terrain to train on, they'll spend 16 hours or 12 hours going up and down the one hill that we have, just to prepare themselves for it. And I've done it, just about everyone else has done it, and hats off to people who still keep doing it, because that's one of the ways you build this mental resilience that actually does a lot more for you beyond physical talent.
You are yourself a race director of the race that Ned is waiting for all year. What is your perspective of the 4-letter event company coming more to Southeast Asia? How is it going to change the game?
I think it was inevitable. And there's obviously pros and cons. The pros, which I always like to think of the positive rather than the negative, is that, again, it will see more beginners coming into the sport. It makes it more accessible to people. And hopefully it also makes races safer, more controlled, with a better experience for people. Because a lot of the races in the last, say, 6-7 years, they sprung up again because either you're super passionate about the fact that you've got some trail that nobody's ever run in, the some rural place in Malaysia or Vietnam, but some of the race organization can be a little sketchy. And this is something that a lot of people don't realize. You're going to be out there for a long time. There's safety concerns, there's nutrition concerns, there's training physical concerns, there's rescue concerns. And so I would hope that with UTMB coming in, that their races at least will set a standard for some of these other races, to ensure that everyone has a great experience. Because if you have a bad experience, you're not going to come back, and you're also going to tell your community, that wasn't really good and I wouldn't recommend it, and there's a knock-on effect from there. But if you have a good experience, it just helps everyone.
I think that is.
And the cons being, yeah.
Okay, fine. One of the things is, again, commercialization, right? Pricing smaller businesses out of the sport or out of the business, taking over areas that were traditionally used by other events, for example, because they have the clout, because they have the money behind to support the things that they want to do, and they can push it forward. That's one of the major cons, I think. It's like small guy versus big guy, right? David and Goliath. And so what can you do about it? I don't know that there's an answer that's going to be particularly satisfactory at this point in time.
I will say, Jeri, look, there's no doubt that the whole UTMB thing, we were both in Ironman, right? And when Ironman went down its road with private equity, you were there before I was, we were down, I'm going to have to take a minute. I'm going to have to take a breath. You know this. They took Ironman from Kona. They just didn't. Why? I don't want to hear any of the BS. So you could fit more bikes on the pier, right? Like the pier holds 2,000 bikes. So they have men and women, like madness. Anyway, so we've been down that road, and when Ironman came stomping in. But I would recommend you, Jeri, have a listen to Florian. Both sides of the story, as Markus always recommends me, rather than me going off on my crazy rants. Florian, I think he's their CEO of UTMB International. He really tried to think about those concerns. He's like, look, we love the sport too. Obviously you remember Paul Huddle, right? Paul Huddle is the head of UTMB strategy. You know, he came over from Ironman. He's a real dude. He's an OG. So, you know, look, I'm trying not to just sit on the fence here. I think UTMB made a mess of a bunch of things. But when you listen to their people, you get the feeling that they have made mistakes, but they'd like to get it right.
That's definitely the message that they're trying to get across, you know. And I honestly have nothing against UTMB. It's just I hate seeing how, and this is not something perhaps that UTMB has caused, but just in general, we're talking about Ironman, and one of the reasons why it was, you know, the World Championships is split over France and Nice and Kona, is that the space also, it's outgrown Kona, you know, and that was inevitable. What UTMB is doing is growing the sport for us, whether we like it or not. There's, you know, you either work with it or you work against it. But if you work against something that's got so much force behind it, what's going to happen? You're going to get squashed, basically. So it's finding ways to work with it.
Laz hasn't outgrown Frozen Head. Western States has never increased their permit from 340, right? They could have just accepted less money. Ironman could have just said, you know, Laz and Western States.
That's true. But the difference is that one is a business and one is a passion. And no matter how passionate Florian and Paul are, it's still a business.
Well, that's been great. I'm trying to wrap my head around what we just talked about. We talked about so many different things, from fashion to running to lifestyle to UTMB. It's been fantastic. I mean, I'm glad we recorded it now the second time, because I think we got so much more out of you, Jeri. It's so good. Thank you so much. I think all of us are wearing different hats, a passion hat, a business hat. We're all athletes ourselves. So it's going to be exciting to see how this going to play out the next months and years, of course. I'm excited for your new store to come. So really good luck with that one. And I'm sure we're going to get you back to get the insights once you've opened that one, because I'm curious to see who you will attract to that store and what you will learn from that.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. As usual, we have this podcast wrapping up with net drop. You might be familiar with this now, Jeri. And net, for you, what are you, boomer? I don't know what kind of generation you're in, actually. But I'm a millennial, and I just Googled the word that we should use these days. It's called slay as a Gen Z word. So your drops are very slay. And I think you should just go for it. Yeah.
My daughter's 23. That's right. She says slay all the time. Oh my God.
Right.
The fact that I'm like in the same sentence as slay, this has made my day. Just about. All right. Let's go. Let's drop. Training. It's the best because it's just running. That's why we do it, to just run. The racing is the icing. It's very tasty icing. I like icing. But if you had to choose, you choose running, not training or racing, just running. So why is it so fun? Because it's us, because it's what we are meant to do at our core. And at your core, being you is the best fun ever. In a world where people are judged on image, socials, imagery, imaginary thoughts, being you is rare. Running is just running. There's nothing to wonder about it. It is what it is. And that's rare these days. It also makes you feel great. Not once, not twice, but thrice. The night before any run, I'm always so excited. It's Christmas. I'm going to be heading out to go play. How cool is that? I'm going out to play as a grown-up. During. The feeling when running. Moving, sweating, adrenaline, is that a word? Smiling, endorphins, nature, the music in the ears, the feet in the trails, the distance you covered. And after. That glow. You know it. How to say it. Energized, buzzed, feeling good for yourself. Strava kudos, you know you like them. Extra helping of cake with icing. And it stays with you all day because you are a runner. It's a cool club. Lots of us are in it now, but it's still the quirky side club. The one that I like, ultra, trail. We are the surfers and skateboarders of running. We are the cool kids. But that doesn't mean we love running any more than the couch to 5K crowd. Indeed, maybe they are the lucky ones. They just found running. They have so much to discover. How cool is that? But the truth is that running is the gift that never stops, no matter what stage you are at. It just feels as good every day. It never wears out. Indeed, it gets better forever. Running, the best gift you ever got. Never forget that. Every step, every run, just run, because it's beautiful. For you, for the body, and your soul. Get out there. Ned.
Thanks, Ned. It might just be that I come back from a run just now and a bit in a endorphin overdrive, but I think this was the first time I actually teared up a bit listening to you. So that was nice. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I loved
I feel
it.
Good job.
Thank you, guys. Like, I didn't like riding as a kid, and what I learned is this. To your point, Jeri. Well, Markus, first of all, I'm glad you like it. To your point, Jeri, it's hard to run a business if you're not passionate about it, right? And it's hard to write about something you're not passionate about. I love running. Love it. So when I write about it, I feel so lucky I can write about it, and then I got to read it out. But awesome. Markus, I'll let you wrap it up.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. Anyone out there listening, thank you so much for spending time with us. So subscribe on our website, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything. Let us know what's going on out there, and we're excited to see you next week again. Thank you, Jeri. Thank you, Ned.
Thank you so much. Jeri, thank you for being on.